for joining us tonight. I'm glad you're here. Tonight's an unusual Coach's Corner, but it's an all-female cast, saving only Al-Anon, who is behind the scenes as our lovely producer tonight. It's a different sort of episode for us. We are doing the women who have won crowns and coronet. As many of you know, there are not a whole lot of women in the SCA. In the 52 years of the SCA who have won crowns or coronets by their own hand. And tonight we have a total of 5 of us on. So without further ado, I'm going to ask them to introduce themselves, to tell us their names, where they won, and the modern year that they won. I'm talking, so I'm gonna go. I'm Elizabeth Mortimer. I won in 1996 up here in Eldemere. Helga, you're muted.
I would say everybody drink. I'm Helga. I'm from the West. I won Miss Coronet in 2022. We just stepped down 2 weeks ago.
One of the reasons why we had to wait. She was busy being princess.
So busy.
Gwen Lillian, would you like to share, please?
Hi, I'm Gwen Lillian. I won the Coronet of Drachenwald in 1988, invested the same day. And Drachenwald's Principality of the East at the time.
Mari?
Hi, I'm Mari Alexander, and I won the Principality of Sinagua in the Kingdom of the West in 2012.
And finally, but certainly not least, Vitress, would you like to? And I'm not even sure if I've got your name right. Can you tell me how to pronounce your name correctly?
Sure. My name is Varessa.
Varessa
Delight Haven. And I won the Coronet tourney for the Principality of Awertha in 1997.
All right. Thank you very much. So before we get started, or before this episode was brought online tonight, we got a question that I think is really important. And so rather than going into anything else, we're going to be doing viewer questions. And so I have a list of viewers' questions. And so the first question that we had, which was a really good question, and I'd like to thank the viewers who shared it with us. The question is, why does it matter that you won as a woman? We all play by the same rules. So why is your victory special? So, Vitress, would you like to speak to that?
Varessa?
Varessa, I'm going to get that. I swear to God.
It's okay, no problem. I think it was, another question was that we all play the same game and play by the same rules. But the reality is, it's not the same rules. And it's not the same issues and struggles that we deal with. And I think that seeing other women in these roles helps to encourage and inspire them to push themselves further and harder. And they can also recognize that it doesn't matter male or female, you can achieve that role.
Sounds good to me. Mari?
It's representation. Even though, as Versa said, we are not actually playing by the exact same game board. It may be the same game, but we don't get the same pieces. We don't get the same cards. And so getting to that what we kind of see as the finish line in our game is representation. It's what did you go through to get here? And as they're going to hear today is that we all had our struggles and we all had a long path to get to the fact that we could win a coronet. And of the ladies here, we've only done it once, and we all have those people that we know that are dukes that have done that, 6, 7, 8, 18 times. And that's not something that is readily available for us. But to be able to represent those who have made it and to show the people that are on their way up that, yes, this is possible. Same as being a Lady Knight. Yes, it is possible. We're like you. You have a path.
Gwen, have you got a thought on this?
Yeah, mine was so long ago. It was a very different world for female fighters. I think some things have not changed. Representation is absolutely crucial. For me, it was a test of the waters, if you will. Could it be done? Could women stand on the field truly as an equal, even though we weren't treated that way, still aren't always, and accomplish it? So for me, that was really the question is, can I? Can it be done?
Helga, you're our newest princess. What are your thoughts on that?
So it kind of mirrors everything that has already been said. To directly answer this question, we all play by the same rules. So why is your victory special? My victory is not special, actually. I'm another fighter on the field. Why does it matter is a completely different story. It matters through representation. It matters because there's so few of us. And in minority groups, we then get a heavier spotlight on it. So this happens to our BIPOC communities. This happens to our female presenting communities. And it's going to continue happening until we become the normal. We are still not. Thus, it matters, but it is not special, which is a very interesting take on it.
I agree. So as frequently happens, I have similar and yet slightly different answer. For those, I agree with Helga that in the general course events, yeah, I won, but representation matters. And I was brought to, this reminds me of Star Wars, The Force Awakens. If you recall that movie, the lead characters were Rey, a woman, and Finn, a black man. And fandom was up in arms over this. It wasn't, they weren't the typical white guys doing it. And then along came the Star Trek changes, the TV shows, and they didn't have male captains, and they had female captains and people of color. And a lot of the fandom was up in arms over that. We frequently see when minorities are, and in this case, women, although a majority of the population, a minority of women fighters, when minorities are represented, it does matter because then people can see it. That they can do it too. If we look at Barack Obama, he's just some guy who happened to be president of the United States, but he was also the first black person who was president of the United States, and that makes a difference. And Kamala Harris right now, half black and Chinese, I think she is, and that matters too because people can see themselves in the minorities, in the people who are out making the changes. So to answer the question for the person who matters, the individual victories, they're important because we say it's possible and it can be done. Everything is impossible until it's proven to you that it can be possible. And I'd like to think that that's what you see in front of you now. Proof positive from some of the women, not all of them, some of the women in the SCA who have won. I think right now we are missing Kayla, who has won, Rowan from Ethelmark. Am I missing anybody else? I don't think so. So there's a very small handful in the SCA who have won. So as I say, representation matters. So I am, oh, Nathan. Okay, so there are the 5 of us plus 3 others, so a total of 8, less than a double handful in the SCA. And in my mind, that's not enough. Mari, you're saying there's more of us? How many are there, Mari? You got the list, don't you? You have the list.
There are 10 total of us who have won. 8 of us have won principality. 2 of us have won kingdoms.
Okay, thank you very much. So there you go. If you like the list directly, I know just drop us a note in Coach's Corner, and we'll get the list from Mari. And sometime during the episode, we'll be sure to post it, or afterwards, and you'll of course be able to find it on the Coach's Corner's YouTube channel. So for some of us, well, actually, I'm going to ask a question. Another one of the questions we got, just real quick, a fast question. Were you knighted or a member of the chivalry when you won your crown or coronet? Gwen Lillian, you were not a member of the chivalry?
No.
Yeah. Nope. So Vanessa, you weren't either?
Nope.
How long afterwards were you knighted, or in Gwen's case, raised to the Order of the Chivalry?
13 years.
Wow.
5 years for me.
Okay, a little surprised. So that you're wondering, the viewers, we are planning. I've asked these ladies to come back and do another episode to discuss sort of the issues around that. But this issue tonight is about the women who have won crown or coronets, and so other issues associated with female fighters. I've asked them to come back and to participate in another episode. So if I'm trying to keep us on track and you think, well, that is a good question, please keep in mind that we're going to be doing this another time. So here you are. You decided that you want to fight in your coronets. You're getting ready for it. What did you do to train for it? Helga, the newest one, what did you do?
Well, so I didn't train for my coronet. At least 6 months leading up to it, I had gotten a new horse. And my new horse decided to tangle himself in a giant fence and deglove his leg. And so I spent the 6 months leading up to it taking care of livestock. However, about 2.5 months before my coronet, I was shoveling 1.5 tons of gravel every 2 days into my truck and then back out of my truck. So I think that counts as working out. But I was not focused on winning coronet. Like, you can ask my husband, the entire list, I was like, I'd be stupid if I won this list. Diesel's $7 a gallon, and I want countertops. And we have a puppy. Like, this would be the stupidest list ever to win. And then I won.
And then you did it.
Yeah, so I'm going to say that shoveling gravel is a fantastic pre-coronet workout.
Gwen, what about you? What did you do or did you do anything to get ready for it?
So when I decided to start fighting in the coronets in Drachenwald, it was really pre-video, pre any social anything. Visualization was a very, very important part. I think it's the precursor of what we do now with watching the videos and analyzing videos. But the other thing was Drachenwald being a small principality, there were a lot of fighters, very, very good fighters, who couldn't always enter the tournaments. And so fighter practices and fighting as many fighters as I could really was what did it. I'd get in armor, would be in armor for 6 hours and would do it again on Sunday. And that, I think, more than anything, is where my training came from.
Murray?
For me, I had been fighting in crowns and coronets for close to 20 years by the time I won. So I went about it in a very scientific method. After I got knighted, I had worked very hard towards getting to be in the later rounds. And 2 years before, I had gone to finals and lost. And I went, okay, I'm dialing this in. I need to figure this out. And so I took scientific method to it completely because, like a lot of the lady fighters, my headspace stood in my way. And so I used the visualization, and specifically, I used a visualization course that is online and on CDs at the time. And I would go through and do that visualization all the time. I was fighting constantly. My time was a trainer, and so we trained together. Helga trained with me. Our entire crew worked, and I had sword in hand every night for 6 months ahead of time. And I did extra workouts, and I looked at it as if I was training to be in the Olympics or any professional fighting thing. Because one of the things that happens with SCA fighters is that we take it casually. We go, we fight, we're hanging out with our mates. It's all very good, but we're not actually training to win things unless we make a very specific effort. And other people who were fighting casually would be like, what are you doing? You're really putting this forward, which was great because it pushed me over that edge and made me the competitor to beat that day. And they didn't, so that was good for me. But it also was a huge amount of work, and I probably did overkill, but it got me to the end. But it also made it so I didn't want to have to ever do that again.
Yeah, hear you. Veressa, what about you?
I find it interesting that each of us are talking about visualization. The group that we were playing with up here was small, and I was lucky sometimes if there was anyone to practice with. I was doing fighter practices on my own, utilizing just the visualization, and I would visualize the different fighters that I knew I would be meeting in the list. So because we fight them often enough, and so their styles, and I would utilize that visualization as I was training by myself, and then hitting any fighter practice that I could, which was about once a week, if we were lucky, twice a week. But most times I was by myself.
I know that feeling. So, like the rest of you, I did a form of visualization. Visualization is you imagine something in your mind, because where else is your imagination? I'm not so much a visual person like that. I'm an auditory person. So I always talk to myself. I'd be in the car and I'd be that crazy lady talking to herself in the car. I'd like to think that people thought that I was maybe singing along to the radio, but really I was talking to myself in the car. I was lucky that I had made the finals once before and the semis and quarters on a fairly regular basis. So I had done that. So I didn't have to worry about that kind of stress. But it seemed for me that there was some sort of mental barrier. So I had to do the positive self-talk on that. So I just think that's interesting. So for regular viewers of Coach's Corner, you know that I'm not really big on the woo-woo, but all of us here do, haha, the visualization, and in my case, positive self-talk in lieu of visualization. So I think that's very interesting. I think that's a lesser known technique, but I would encourage anybody watching to read up on it, because scientifically there's very little difference between your mind practicing and doing something and your body doing it as well. And there was an experiment done with trying to sink baskets while playing basketball. There was the control group did nothing. There was a group that just did visualizations, and there was a group that shot baskets every day. And at the end of the trial period, I don't want to say the trial period because frankly I forget. The people who actually had done it improved the most, but the people who visualized it were only slightly worse. And the control group really hadn't improved all that much because they were just busy hanging out watching television. So there is evidence to back up visualization or positive self-talk. And my positive self-talk wasn't, gee whiz, Bess, you're terrific, you can do it. It was talking myself through the fights and through where I was. So I have to hear things in order for my mind to learn them. So here you are, Helga, you're shoveling gravel and we're all visualizing or talking about things. Did you face any obstacles going into your coronets? Anything that made you think maybe I ought not to do this? Vanessa, anything from your end?
As far as, no, I really wasn't. As far as going into the tournament, no. It was a focus. I had great support from my family and my knight. So I didn't find obstacles going into the coronet, a few at and after the coronet.
Yeah. Murray, what about you?
I think for me, my own brain was my worst enemy, and it had been for years in fighting. And so having that be quelled by doing the visualization, and the trouble for me that I found was that in doing all of the things, because you talked about on Coach's Corner before, having no excuse fighting. And so because I had gone through and gotten rid of every excuse, it's not that I didn't eat well today and that's why. It's not that my brain is, something has happened and I'm mad. I got rid of every excuse that I could possibly have that would defeat me. So the only reason that I was going to lose is because I wasn't good enough. Well, that's a big one, isn't it? And then the other part of it was that in doing all the things, there was a little voice in my head that was, if you could fight really well, you wouldn't have to do all of this. So that was my own battle with it. But I had everybody was in my corner and trying to, they said, you want this, we're going to back you 100%. We're going to make it possible for you to do this. So I was my only stumbling block, but I'm a really big stumbling block.
I hear you, sister. Gwen, what about you?
My preparation going up to Coronet was smooth. Entering the lists, the only hitch I had was getting up enough courage to ask the person who I wanted to be my consort. We were not related. He was in the military. He was a non-fighter. And I actually fought my first Coronet without asking him. I fought for a squire brother, and then I finally screwed up enough courage to do it. So off and on the field prior to, no, there were really no obstacles. The Drachenwald there was some awesome fighters, and people were very, very supportive in that principality. The issues I had were later on in the Coronet and later on.
I think that we should talk about those because I think people want to know about it. Helga, what about you?
So if we're just talking about day of challenges, literally $7 a gallon diesel, like it's a heck of an expense.
Leading, other than prices of gas, though, like leading.
I mean, price of gasoline. You put so many miles on your vehicle, raining. Right. So I was actually the day of. I was food poisoned. So I didn't get warm-up fights. I didn't do my normal routine. Nothing. I was literally like, I got in my rig. I did challenges. I got out of my rig for reasons. I got back into my rig and I went into my fights. And then my first round challenge told me I could hit them harder. I proceeded to hit everybody so hard in that list that I got complaints. So thank you for setting the tone, my first round fight. But also I have a physical challenge that I will carry with me for the rest of my life. I have $50,000 in this shoulder. You can see the big scar there. So I have a totally rebuilt shoulder and elbow that affects my fighting and will for the rest of my life. So it is something that it's a challenge in every list, but it's a challenge I live with.
I'm sorry. I recently had my bicep reattached and I tore my rotator cuff, so not quite as bad as yours, but dang. And it looks like, is it your sword arm?
Yes.
Yeah.
So I completely destroyed that shoulder and ripped out my triceps along with a partial tear of the biceps and did a bunch of other stuff to the joints. So
I'm curious, I'm sure our viewers will be, while I'm not asking you to discuss it, was it a fighting related injury that caused this? Because people...
I know what it feels like to be drawn and quartered between two horses. So I tore everything out from this wrist to this wrist. The left shoulder is still unrepaired, but tore pectoral muscles, everything. So I was 16 when it happened.
Okay. Taking the historical reenactment a little too far. Just thought I'd toss that out.
I'll tell you, it's an interesting sound.
I bet it is. For my own self, I don't think I faced any direct challenges on the day. I had been in the hospital myself for other unrelated things. About 8 days before that, I had some neck injury issues, and I was in the hospital trying to get that worked out. So those are some of the issues I faced. I think this question was directed a little bit about, did we face anything from possibly other fighters or male fighters? I know I've always been surrounded by a very supportive crew who never said anything, never said boo to me when I authorized back in 1987. Helga, were you even alive?
I was probably like 3 or 4 months old.
Yeah.
I like how Mari's down in the corner just like, fuck you, Squire.
Yeah, pretty much. For those of you who don't know, Mari, you were Helga's knight, right?
Right.
Did you also knight Helga? Or...
No, I knighted. Well, I mastered Gwendolyn Rhiannon when I was queen in 92.
Okay.
And Helga was my squire at the time. And when I moved to Australia, Havek, my knight, took over training of Helga. So, and really, Helga is very similar to me in that she was my squire, but she's the known world's fighter. You know, she fought with everybody everywhere. And that was a big part of her training and also of my training, is that I fought everybody everywhere. And Havek was my touchstone to go back to and go, okay, this guy is talking out his ass. Can you tell him in knightly terms to stop talking to me so that I don't look like I'm an ingrate? And Helga luckily had, well, she's happy to tell people that she's an ingrate and she hates them, but that's her.
I am verbose.
You are, and not shy with your opinions.
Hi, thank you for joining us.
I had to live cast evening prayer for my order in my parish, so here's good. I am
Quick,
on
Beth,
a different
ask her all the
path right now.
questions.
I am. So we've had some questions that the viewers have asked. So I'm going to ask you to answer them for us. So
Okay.
if you wouldn't mind, your SCA name, when you won your coronet or your crown in modern years, and the kingdom or the principality that you won it in.
It's Viscount Nathan Gervais. It was of Elfhaven, but we modified that. Duchess Houghton, and that was a courtesy title from Duke William. I won the coronet in 1981, so I was first. And it was the Principality of the Mists in the West.
Okay. So the other questions that the viewer question that we had was, why does it matter? Here we are having an episode about women. Why does it matter that you won as a woman? We all play by the same rules. So what makes your victory special?
It made absolutely no matter that I was a woman. What made the matter is that I got through the system as a woman and I won it. And I won it by right of arms, although there was some complications about that. In order to try to bring in non-fighters into the royalty as a royal peer, they set up what they called a sixfold list. And to this day, there are people, men mostly, who say they want to put an asterisk by my name because I not only won the fighting clean, I won heraldry clean. I won the dancing competition clean. I came in second in performance. They didn't know I was trained as an opera singer, and I sang a little 12th century hymn Terry I lost to a stand-up comic. And what was the other one? And something else. And we had a couple of ranked chess masters. You could dismiss one, and I dismissed chess. But I won flat out. And the minute I won the fighting competition, I knew I was obligated in order to maintain fighting as the primary art to win this thing. Now, the reason I entered is that a year before, William had won the principality for me, having, may I say, thrown the crown final when he was with his son. So we went out the next week and won the principality for me, and we were stepping off the throne. He said if she wants it again, she's got to win it. So I did.
So you said some things that are new to me. Even back in 1987, when I joined, crowns and coronets were just fighting. You had other components of your coronets?
It was something that William Lucky dreamt up because he wanted to fuck up the system. And he saw to it that people who weren't serious about chivalry and they weren't serious about the Middle Ages, men would enter. I think it was the only woman who entered, and would obviously sweep through all these arts and crafts things that could be installed as prints and, thumb the nose at the fighters, the heavy fighters. And we didn't have much else but heavy fighters. We had archery competitions, but fencing was kind of déclassé. So he set it up that way. And I said, over my dead body. And I got in there and I showed them that I could best the heralds in a written test by an enormous margin. and I could, with William, I could dance a pavane that would put them all to shame. That I mean, and I just swept through, and it was like, you want to play that game? Let's play that game. I
Wow.
accept.
What I have seen with other coronets and crowns, because the crown represents everybody, you have the fighter, and they say you must have an art to display. So you might make some garb and display it, and that shows that you can represent everybody. But I've never heard of this round robin type thing
It
not round robin. Happened
happened.
once, I believe it. Continuing in the questions to catch you up, how did you train for your cornet?
Oh, good God. I trained with everybody. We used to have the big fighter practice here out in our backyard, and then our front yard, and then we kind of outgrew it, and there was a kind of internal fight again, you know how it is, and it moved down to a BART station, the BART being our transit. Um,
Oh,
and the cops loved us. We'd take over the BART station parking lot, and on the nights we were fighting there, nobody stole anything from any of the cars. They didn't dare come near us. Um, but, and it's still down there. I mean, it's still down there on Thursdays or on Tuesdays and Thursdays. You see me swatting. There's a little fly that loves me and wants to bite me. So I remember somebody coming here, and then we'd held a potluck, a big spaghetti potluck for all the fighters. Came here, and there were like 8 dukes. They had come from someplace that didn't have a duke, and it was like, their mouths fell open. So I trained with everybody. Um, I was never squire. I was Bill's squire, and then I was his wife. It sort of worked that way. Um, I just trained with everybody.
did you
Yeah.
did you face any obstacles like working your way up to coronets?
Oh yeah, because they didn't. Well, it wasn't working up to Coronet. And the first time I put on armor, it was very clear that women had not been allowed to fight until Trudy, basically another one of Bill's acolytes, had basically said, "I'll bring my lawyer," and they backed down. So I came in right after that. Before me, very very shortly before me, um, Mary of Uffington was knighted. Her daddy, I think he's passed to glory. A wonderful man. Um, he was a knight, and they were good and gentle people. Everybody loved them. As it happened, they were also very devout Catholics. So they were very conservative, but nicely conservative, loving family. So it was very easy to shoehorn her in. And she was knighted, I think, the same day as Christopher Houghton. And I was there. And that was 2 years before, I was very shortly before I was fighting and came up through the system. But the first time I put on armor, they went back to the original way that they got women off the field when some woman dared to go on the field, and they beat her to the ground. She cried, and they said, "See, women are not made for this." So they hazed me, and I was concussed, I don't know, 20 times. And all I could do was, I knew they were hazing me, was, "Yes, sir, thank you, I'll have another." I stood up to them until I earned their respect. Because if you're going to play a man's game, you be a man. And that's what I did.
Well, you thanks, by the way, for doing that, because of you, because of Hillary, it meant that we could fight. When I joined the SCA, I was told women didn't usually fight, that they could. And for those of you who are unaware of it, Hillary Serendip was the person that fought for, as we heard, to get women to be allowed to fight in the SCA. prior to that, as I understand, it
She
was.
was.
She wasn't. Oh, okay, then tell me
Trudy.
that.
Trudy.
Trudy
That was
Lacklandia.
Trudy.
Yes,
That was
Trudy. So
Trudy. That was Trudy.
you're right. I'm wrong. It's Trudy Lacklandia. Yes, I met her. I think it was at 50th. I think it was anyhow. So, but this is the
She
people
came with
who
her
have,
lawyer.
she came with a lawyer. The people who have gone before us, and this ties in with the question: why does it matter that you won? And it doesn't matter that we won, but it matters that we did it. This is what we've had going forward. This is the people before me. This is the fights that they had, and I'm the people before you guys, and that's why we have this. So that kind of makes me wonder. We talk about the people who've come before. We have a viewer question, and the viewer question is: did each of you have a fighter that you looked up to or who you inspired? So why don't you continue? Did you have a fighter who you looked up to and who inspired you?
Well, I see Chris, Bill's son just arrived, or that was his question. Well, at the time, I was fool enough to look up to Bill. We ended up being married for 30 some odd unhappy years, but we stuck it out to the
Well,
I think I looked up to all the jocks who were really skilled. Um, I had a kind of a respectful flirtation with uh, Bellatrix, and then I decided he was too full of himself. And I've had a love-hate relationship with Jim with Greyhelm for years. I nearly killed him once. I nearly pulled a sword on him at a 12th night and got stopped because there was a big interfamily fight. And he said something about Bill, and I had my hand on the hilt of my knightly sword, and I was going to kill him, and I got stopped. So we have a love-hate relationship. I was the first woman. He said, if I have to break my rule of not fighting a woman, you're the only woman who has enough honor. I will fight you.
oh, okay. I'm
Um,
gonna.
it,
Sorry.
it was, I don't know, it was a band of brothers.
Fair enough. Fair enough. So I'm gonna go in oldest. So Veressa, what about you? Was there somebody who you looked up to?
Sir Kilson. He was my knight at the time, and a lech, which he totally admitted to. And so I was his challenge. And because of the challenges that he was working through, I it was Sir Kilson all the way, and Duke Paul.
Okay. So Gwen, you won before me, I think. So was there somebody that you looked up to?
Yeah, I think I was one after Maven before Verezi and you. And, at the time, East Kingdom, I obviously didn't know the women chivalry from the West. I had definitely heard of Trudy and Maven. And, but the fighter in the East that probably helped me and inspired me the most was Farrell von Halstern. He accepted the fact that it didn't matter what I was inside. I put on armor, I put on a helmet, I swung a sword. He was going to downright kill me and show me how it's done every time. And that's how I learned.
So for me, it's Fern, Sir Fern, Fernanda from the Middle Kingdom. Eldamir was part of the Middle Kingdom when I joined. In fact, there was no Eldamir. And my first Penzik was Penzik in 1997. And I'd been authorized for about 5 months. And I didn't really know a whole lot of other female fighters, but I'd heard about this woman, Fern. She'd been knighted the year before in 19. No, let me rephrase that. I went in, God help me, I'm too old. I authorized in 87. She was knighted, I believe it was in 86. I might have the year wrong.
85.
85, okay. So I went to Penzik in 87, and she was standing in court. She was a guard in court, and her hair, I'm totally fangirling over her because, wow, she was just She was it for me. She was wearing red and white Landsknecht, and she was guarding, and she was holding a spear. And to this day, I looked at her and I thought that's what I wanted to be. And again, this goes back to representation. I had Fern, and she was everything I wanted to be. And she knows this. I fangirled so hard that I got her address and wrote her a letter, and she was so kind to me. She wrote me back, and I still have that letter. So, Vern, if you're watching, you still are. You always have been, and always will be an inspiration to me. And thank you. So next we have Mary. Mary, what? Oh, go ahead.
I gotta go let in a cat. He was feral, and he sometimes insists on going out in the cold. And he said
We
that I'll be
understand
right
about animals here. So, Mari, what about you?
So I had a lot of male inspiration, having Fabian and Havek and Sagan and a lot of people who were doing amazing things on the field. But Hillary was the first knight that I knew, and she, I believe, was already a quad peer by the time I met her. And so I just thought that that's what you do as a female, is that you do all the things, because that's what we do. And Siobhan Nashe, who is a pelican in Silver Desert, which is a part of Sinagua in the Kingdom of the West, was the first female fighter that I watched fight and spent time with fighting. And so when I first started and was not interested in fighting at all because it was hot and sweaty and icky, and these people were crazy, she was the one that went, well, we're having a very good time. And so she was the one who had that gumption to get out and fight and to go toe to toe. And she was treated with respect, and she was treated well, and she had a great time. And so when I started fighting, she was that person I looked to. And as I got better, there were the three of us that ran together, and it was me and Sir Bryn and Sir Elena. And obviously, none of us were knighted then, but we kind of honed one another and kept each other going when there were things the boys wouldn't understand. We had each other to do it. And I had Helga from early on, because Helga and I got together when she was 16. So that was back in 2002, Helga?
2004.
2004. And so Helga and I ran together for years, even though both of us were unbelted. And her delight in fighting would prop me up when mine flagged. And I hope that my delight in fighting kept her up when hers flagged. So that was a lot of the reason that I kept at it, because I needed something bigger than just my own desires to be good.
Helga, what about you?
Amusingly enough, she's on the show. Maven is a badass, and I grew up on stories. We didn't get to meet until I was in my 20s, and just sit and talk. But you want to talk about somebody that literally didn't just follow somebody's path, was like 2 fingers in the air, just fuck your standards, I'll knock you out around a fire. Like, my little redneck heart was so happy that I'm like, oh, I can be a little wild savage thing too, and pretty. Fuck you, hell yes. So she's on the show, and of course, my night Mari, I looked up to her. Man, did we meet awkwardly, because I didn't know anything about the SCA while she was princess the first time. But Maven really, there are stories painted into the West Kingdom tapestry of the things Maven did. And if we can just have a show of story time with Maven, it is fucking worth it.
You got to remind me, because I forget the stories. I keep going and making stories.
I got offended, so I was gonna pull a sword on a dude. Literally, she's just packed full of these things. And as a very, very savage individual, I didn't have to conform, because she had already done so much of the work. And so how could you not look up to that?
And I passed the torch. I passed the torch to you, because I was 82 and I was already entering religious life, and I had to change my whole attitude towards violence and fighting. It was just, I was a servant leader. I was I was when I was princess too. That was important to me. was that I was there to serve the people. And a lot of the guys were there for babes and boobs. And I knew that once I was in that position, and it's just as true when I serve at the altar, I am there to, in this case, it was chivalry. It was showing what we should be when we're not being wild and crazy and drunk, which we can be after hours. That you're there to serve the people. And
please note why she is defining why she's one of my heroes still.
So we're getting some viewer questions, and I have a question that I'd like to ask you ladies, and then it'll lead into the viewer question. So the question I have for you, did winning Coronet or your crowns change anything in the SCA for you in any way? And if so, how? So we'll start with the baby, Helga. It's been a week, Helga. What changed? Or 2 weeks? What's changed?
This is going to be a real raw answer. So every time you reign, I've now been blessed with reigning 4 times, 3, 2 as queen, one is princess, not by my own hand, one is princess by my own hand. Reigning always steals part of your soul. It steals part of your drive. It steals a bunch of other stuff because you see everything behind the curtains. And there is a raw chunk of the SCA that you see. And you will never in your world get it back. It is different as sovereign than it is as consort. It's actually much harder as consort. As sovereign, there's a lot of stuff that you can kind of just be like, go see the person that runs the spreadsheets. And there's a little bit more partying. And there's a little bit of other stuff. But I'll tell you that every time I've reigned drink, one of the things that changes the SCA for me is our newcomers. Our newcomers always gift us back the things that were stolen within the reign. They're lifeblood. But the coolest thing about reigning by my own hand is watching that happen for Hans, because he hadn't experienced that. He had never been consort before in reigning. And so I'd gotten to experience that. I had experienced that loss and then regaining it through that. And he never understood it until that moment in time. And at the end of the reign, we sat down and he was like, this was a completely different experience. And you're right. When you talk about that, like the newcomers gift you back these things, your guard gifts you back these things that you start to lose sight of, and it reinvigorates the SCA for you in a new light. I got to watch that happen for somebody else. I got to watch that gift that our newcomers give, that our guard gifts, that our court gives to us as royals, get given back to somebody else. And I got to sit back and drink the beer. It was great.
Mari, what about you?
For me, go ahead, Maiden.
I just want to say to Helga, that's why I deeply respect you. What you just said. I mean, we may be half a century apart, but boy, it's the same, cut out of the same bolt. So you were saying.
So I had reigned twice as queen and once as princess, not by my own hand, like Helga did. And when I won for Brock, who I had been fighting for 17 years. So even though I had changed partners through that time and I had had other love interests, Brock was my stalwart mate. He's one of my best friends. He and I have been ups and downs, and he had supported my fighting for the 17 years. And he is a non-fighter. And for those of you who don't know him, he is a pelican, and he is now a laurel of dance. And he is a small human, and he is ferocious as they come. But he's not a heavy fighter, and he's not a fencer. And he was somebody I thought that being able to gift the society with him as a ruler was going to be an incredible thing. And I was right. And it was something that in being consort, I was, you get to be the pretty princess. You get to be, the queen. And I ran all the things because my partners were not capable of that. So Brock, however, is very analytical and very on top of things, like, as Helga says, he gets to run the spreadsheets. And to be able to hand the principality to him and to hand him to the principality and to watch how he glowed under having that magic. And that part was incredible for me. And I'm not sure if it's so much because I was sovereign by my own hand or because I had done it so many times already. Because once you've reigned, you kind of have the back of it. And having him be able to experience that and then to be able to have those conversations with somebody who is as organized as I am, and to be able to say, hey, let's do these parts, let's do those parts. And luckily in Principality, we had a lot less of the underbelly. And as queen, I had dealt with several very unpleasant tasks. And so being able to have mom and dad upstairs, when things went bad, we went, oh, that sounds like a crown problem. You deal with that. And so we were able to pass that off. So, that part was nice. And I got to sit in the boy throne, which of course it's not boy throne, it's my throne, and I'm a girl. It's a girl throne now. And that worked well. And Brock's head's smaller than mine, so I wore the male coronet because it fit me. It did not fit him. It'd go around his neck like a necklace. So, good times.
Good. So then I think Gwen Lillian, you're the next one. How did it, if the SCA changed for you, how did it change for you as a consequence of ruling?
So for me, again, as with Mari, I fought for a non-fighter, a consort, and being able to give him that gift, it was in my mind, to someone who would never have seen that ability, that chance, would never have had the chance to do that. Stefan is a great guy and talented musician, and we had a lot of fun. Our reign did not start out well, but once the investiture happened, we had a lot of fun, and it was a large part due to him being so welcomed. For me as a fighter, it changed after the fact more than while I reigned. I was in a very, very supportive principality, and so that was very easy. But when I left that principality and I was an unbelted fighter who had won a coronet by my own hand, I was the first to do it solely by fighting. Mathan was always the first, and I give her all that credit because the fact that she did that helped me through my difficulties. So going into other kingdoms and going other places as a unbelted female presenting fighter who had won a coronet was very different. And the approach and attitude I got about just being a female fighter was one thing. After winning that coronet, it was very different. Some of it was expectations. Some of it was really, you think you belong. You think you're one of as good as us, depending a little bit where I went. Once I got to the West Kingdom, that all evaporated, thank God. But in other places, yeah, there was definitely a time that I went through, who do you think you are?
Wow, that sucks donkey balls.
That was a long time ago. Very different era.
Ressa, what about you?
Wow. Helga's comment about the newcomers, absolutely, definitely wanted to put on the best face and be the example of what could be and the possibilities that were out there. And Sir Cyrus, our current king, I was his first princess. And so, there's great joy in that. And obviously I did something right because he's still around and he's our king now. But I think it opened my eyes to Gwenland and I'm sorry if I mispronounced that. Your comments about traveling around as a non-fighter after your reign, it definitely changed that, because the community up here, for the most part, was supportive, but there were still those individuals that you would fight, and it's, well, you think you're one of us?
As
No,
an
you're
unbelt.
not.
As an
Right,
unbelt.
as an
Yeah.
unbelt, exactly. And just because you won it doesn't mean anything to those particular fighters, and that was a challenge. How my consort was treated changed a lot, and I think in a lot of degrees soured the SCA for him, because we were the first, and he was the first male consort, and so he had to deal with a lot of male egos, and there were times where he was called Mrs. Veressa, you know, and so there were, I think that was the greatest challenge, and that was the greatest eye-opening aspect of reigning, um, being the first female to reign. And I did like Mari. I put the man hat on and sat in the man chair. It's a girl chair now. And going back on heroes also, and I didn't get a chance to do that before, but Mari was my other one. And we communicated back and forth, and you know, we had a great relationship that encouraged and inspired, I think, on both sides. Definitely on my side, it's like, yeah, it's Mari, cool. And when we get together, we had a blast fighting. But that would be the biggest change, is how it opened my eyes to how the other side was treated. And it's grown a lot since then. Helga's comment, in fact, Hans and I had conversations regarding this, and he's saying, I am loving this, and he was not getting the negative feedback from the other male fighters. It was very supportive. So I think we've headed in the right direction, and there's that positive aspect now, where it wasn't necessarily there when we reigned.
Mason, what about you? How did the SCA change, or did it change for you?
First of all, I want to clarify. We did the fighting round robin, and I was clean. So I went through whatever it was, 7 or 9 rounds. And when I won, I knew that was going to have to be it. I was going to have to win everything. That, you know, I don't care what they said about it, but it's going to have to happen. Over the years, I have found, first of all, winning the crown rather than the coronet in the West is damn near impossible, because we've got these super jocks these days. This isn't just a group, as it was in the beginning of the SCA, of people who loved the movie Robin Hood and had just discovered Tolkien, and had a romanticism about King Arthur, and were always the last to be picked for the team in high school. We now have real jocks, and we had enough of them that you'd look at the list and say, all right, which one of those two is going to win this time? And that was it. Even if they had to ignore that one blow that would put them over, and that's what happens a great many times. I had to learn how to be very tough about what I accepted as a killing blow, because the guys were doing that. You can't fall right down, because it's a matter of staring down your opponent. It became a very unpleasant game for me. Not the fighting per se, which I always loved, but the politics behind it. I noticed that something happens when you gain the throne or become president of the United States, or practically anything. When you sit in the seat of power, one of two things happen. Your real self shows. You either become more responsible and more careful and more noble and more caring, or you become a total asshole. And there doesn't seem to be anything in between. I'm getting
A
somewhere.
lot of bland brains.
Fucking love you.
Now, I've been an asshole in my life, but I tend to hide it rather nicely. It's not my style, you know. I have that kind of scholarly, you know. I've got a doctorate in theology, for God's sake, and you know, it's not my style, you know, to be, you know, like that. Um, did it change me? Yeah, it did. But it took a long time for the value of that change to settle into my bones and realize it wasn't a fluke, that I didn't get knighted because all the grown-ups were fighting over whose girl was going to be next. Um, in fact, I was the only, for many years, person who killed on the field in regular combat. Um, a super duke whom I will not name, and I beat him into the ground. And when we walked out there, I said to him, "You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to take your leg, and then I'm going to beat you into the ground." He said, "Yeah, yeah, yeah." I took his leg and I beat him into the ground. The marshal had to pull me off. Years later, I heard him say, and I was killed by a woman, and I had to go out and hurt somebody.
Wow.
So that was under there. That was under there. And yet he's highly respected. There was a time when they took me and Bill on for political reasons, and a rumor was spread, and they were going to have a star chamber and pull my belt without even telling me.
Holy shit.
And it was ugly. It can be very ugly in this group. I don't know about your kingdoms, and I don't know what it's like now because I haven't been active in a lot of years. But there was a time when there was such grasping for power, especially in the West, that it could be very, very ugly. But it's still glorious, and I have stories to tell, not about myself, but about wonderful times with Duke Armand fighting off the hordes of Aten dwarves singing Men of Harlech. I mean, things that were amazing that you will not ever have in the mundane world, ever. I have a friend who spent a lot of time at the Barnum Valley Circus. We trade stories. My stories are better than his.
So this leads into a viewer question that we have, and the viewer question is, for those who have served as royals by their own hand and as fighters consorts, did you find any difference in the way you were treated? And I have to sit this round out. So, so let's just keep going. Nathan, did you find any difference in how you find any difference in the way you were treated as a consort versus by right of arms?
Not really, because Bill was very strange. When I was his consort, he was kind of priming me, and he gave me a lot of authority. But then, on the other hand, when I was reigning, he suddenly got very competitive. But he had laddies in waiting, and one of the guys put flowers in his beard, and he played with it because he was a duke for many years before he ever met me. So it wasn't such a big threat for him. It was a little. It was a little different.
Mari, what about you? I know that you've reigned.
I think that the difference was hard to tell because I was a quad peer by the time I'd won my principality. So I had reigned, I had all the other peerages, and so there was a certain amount of respect that came from what I had done previously. I think the biggest place to tell that difference, though, was when we had gone to Penzik, and I sent Brock off to all the Queen's teas, and I went to the field to fight because, well, I won. I got to do that part, and so there were some folks that had that extra modicum of respect for me as a knight because I had won my tournament. especially when you explain to people that, yes, my tournament had twice the number of people in it that your kingdom tournament does. And so they were like, oh, wow, okay, this is a thing. This is important, and therefore you must be important. And I was like, well, I was important before, but you're right. Now I'm super important, at least in my own mind. Let's go. So I did get a certain amount of extra respect from that. I did have one situation that was very odd walking through merchants, and somebody had said, I don't know why she's wearing that white belt, because only knights can wear white belts. And anytime somebody says to me in person that, I use Mary of Buffington's phrase of, yes, that's what the king said when he gave it to me. But I was kind of taken aback because we're used to a certain amount of fame in our own world, and when you go to Penzic and there are people that don't actually play SCA, and having that disrespect was it took me aback a little bit, and
Yeah.
I had to reach deep for some politeness because I didn't have any in the moment, and I was representing my principality, so I was like, huh. And luckily, I had a couple of the Western Knights nearby that took the gentleman off.
I was
And
about to say,
don't know
and your
what
squire
happened.
wasn't there to just be real mean.
Oh yeah, he would have had bruises on his shins. Whack, whack, whack.
Swear to
But-
God, I've had people the same thing. It's like I'm wearing a white belt, and it must not count.
Right,
Like-
right. Not Cracker Jacks, sweetie. Not Cracker Jacks. Actually earned this thing. But that was a weird conflation between the two of being so used to having everybody going, yay, you've done great, and suddenly having these people be super rude, don't even know them, and it was like, I'm not even sure how to respond to you. That's not going to make my whole principality look like assholes. Although I think my principality would have backed me had I done it, but you try to be above that when you're wearing the hat.
I hear you. Helga, what about you? Did you find people treated you differently as a consort versus when you won by right of arms?
I have never been shown off like a prize horse more.
As a consort or
After I won.
after you won? Yeah.
I had people name dropping me in parties. I had people that would be like, "Oh, I'm gonna go with you," and just like literally using me like a fucking prize horse. I actually pulled people aside and told them like, "You are stealing my joy. Like, don't do this. Like, yes, it's cool I won. Stop it. This behavior is actually not okay. You are putting me on display, and you're using me as a token." I also had an interesting couple things where, one, we had somebody start the rumor that Hans threw our 5th round fight. Because, nobody's going to question a guy about their win. Even if their win's ugly, everybody shuts up. But somehow my husband threw our 5th round fight. And if you could see the bruises that he and I left on each other, because 3 rounds, I took 2, he took 1. He knocked the sound out of me. I knocked the wind out of him. So that was something that we dealt with during the reign. And how you deal with that is by grace. And you just tell people, would you like to go fight now? Cool, great. And then one of the other ones I had was the real deal. So I had a interesting interaction with another fighter who was a knight that made sure they came to hunt me down to see if I was the real deal and if I actually won. I beat the dog shit out of that kid.
So I fought, my other finalist was my consort. I knocked him into the losers bracket. I went up the winners bracket. He came up the losers brackets, and we fought in the finals. And I have never had anybody ask me directly if I felt that he threw it. And if you knew him, there was no way he was going to throw the fight. I think that he would have been insulted at the idea of it, and I know I am, and that really bothers me every time us partners or spouses fight. Especially if they are not of the same gender, that comes up, and that just pisses me right off. You get
It is something that the society is not ready to face into yet,
Right.
and it's going to be something that we are going to continue to deal with, especially as we have more female fighters on the field. This is something that, like, we have questions in here about, like, how can guys
Right.
or how can other peers help stop this? Stop those rumors in their
Stop.
tracks. Like, that is really an active thing that if anybody wants to take away from, stop those rumors in their tracks, because otherwise you see more female fighters or female presenting fighters choose to not be in lists where they may face their spouse.
Yep.
Actively choosing that because they're trying to pre-beat that rumor. And most of the time, women will surrender their ability to fight in the list for their partner to then go fight in the list. Stop that rumor now. You want to see more female fighters on the field? You want to see them more in coronets and crowns? Tell people that start those rumors to go fucking sit on a dick. And
Yep.
not like in the fun way. Like, not a good dick. A really bad dick. A terrible dick. Like, maybe the worst lay of their life.
And it can
I
actually,
that guy.
it needs to expand beyond that to Shiv and their squires, because more females are becoming squired to male Shiv, and it's the same thing. And that's exactly right. For those people, peers and other fighters, male presenting fighters, who are saying, how do we help? Stop the gaslighting, stop the undermining, stop the rumors, because that is what hurts every single one of us who have already been there, and every one single female who's in armor now.
Yeah. So when I knocked my consort into the losers bracket, as we were going in and they were pulling the names for the rounds and everything, people said, "Oh, do you guys not want to fight?" We're like, "Oh, you are not screwing around with the list on my account. You do these names fair and square. You leave them there, and whatever happens, happens." Because the last thing that we wanted was any kind of list fixing. So that was a real pisser. So wow, one of the
Uh,
questions. Sorry, go ahead. Did I miss?
I'm not sure that Bill didn't ease up a little bit on his son in the crown finals, but he had an ego the size of the Great Pyramid, and when we fought, it wasn't. He was a patriarch of the old school. He was older than I am. I'm now 82. He's been dead for 10 years, so he would be 92 at this point, and he would not yield to me when we fought. It was ugly, and
Ugly how?
but that's the way it was. When I fought other people, it was ugly too. So I walked out there. It was just another warm body to beat in the ground. But we had a very strained relationship in many ways. It was it was bittersweet. He was very proud of me, and I was very proud to be part of that family. And that even after he was an invalid, when I swore fealty, I would always bring his sword and speak fealty for him and for me. So we always had that bond, but it was a strained one. So marriage, two professionals in any field in marriage can be very difficult sometimes.
Maven, you've raised an interesting point. You've mentioned your age, 82, and Helga, who was 3 months when I won. And we have a viewer question that says, there seems to be quite a gap in ages between Sir Helga and the rest. Why do you think that is? So why it seemed like when you and I won in the old days, and Rashenza won then, and Virasa. So in the old days, there was a spate of us that won, and they weren't small coronets or crowns. I think there was 35 in mine or something like that.
Mm.
And then there was a long gap. And then I'm not sure who after the long gap, but then there seems to be some more now. Why do you think there was that long gap? Why do you think there was the gap between Helga, in age and everybody else? Any ideas?
What was happening in the world?
Well, that's
So I can actually kind of jump on this one. Statistically, we're going to see this change. So when we first started, we had very few female fighters, like percentage-wise in the population. We are now seeing many, many more minority community fighters coming into the fighting population. We are at about a 10-year lag between when you start and when you're knighted. In some areas, it's even further along than that because I'm into spreadsheets. And so what we're probably going to start seeing is we're actually going to start seeing a boom of our minority community starting to take crowns and coronets and starting to come into those gaps and fill those gaps. So there will not probably be another 10-year break between me and the next person that does it, actually, because that's the difference between Mari's and I's reign. And so we're going to start seeing this break down as we see our communities actually become more mixed and much healthier within our minority communities, having access to the information, not being tokenized and not being put on a fucking pedestal the entire time, which creates bigger burnout quicker, by the way. And so we're going to start seeing this gap reduce. The reason why we have this beforehand, again, it's a log curve. We're going to see this change.
It actually is already reducing because the first 3 coronets were really quite far apart. Mathan, you were 81.
81.
I was 88. And then Bess, you were next.
96.
So that, that's a 15-year period. We had 3. So just to keep it in perspective, because Helga's exactly right. It's already reducing in length for the reasons she said. Absolutely.
And just for the record on that, to bear in mind that, yes, it's 10 years between Helga and I, but that Kayla did both of her reigns in that time period. Right. So in that 10 years, we also had Kayla winning crown by her own hand twice.
True.
We saw a lot of in that gap was we saw women going to war and not being war fighters. Had a lot.
Mundanely, yep.
Mundanely, but also SCA wars. I mean, I saw a lot of them but that they say that mundanely is another interesting thing. Marshall, the army opened up to women. The armed forces opened up to women, and women who were called to this kind of chivalric fighting may have gotten drained off into that. But I saw a lot of women in the at Penzic and at Estrella and a lot of them, but they didn't really feel that they could push forward to knightly honors, or they weren't interested, or they said they weren't interested.
And in speaking to various women, I'm sorry, Versa, go ahead.
No, I was just, the comment that Mathan made about lots of women going to wars. My first Estrella I went to, there were the knight that was down there with us going, oh, we'll put you with these fighters and they'll take care of you. And so there was that philosophy of, oh, she's a female fighter, we must take care of her in one of the kingdoms in the lower 48. And I went, yeah, I'll see you guys later. I'm over here where the real fighting's going on. But I find that interesting. And that philosophy, I think, over the years has changed. And I don't think we have that as much as we did then.
I think we're seeing more tourney fighters in this last 10, 15 years. When I was coming up in through the ranks, we had a lot of female fighters on the war field, and several that had, the ones that didn't really want to be hit, they were doing the archery, and then a lot of them would wind up transitioning to being war fighters on the field. But when you talk to them about doing tourney fights, they're like, oh, I don't like tourney fights, but I really like to be with my war unit. I really like to have all of us out there together. And so it was a place that they felt safe, whereas on the tourney field, they felt singled out. And they were more than happy to fight war, but they had no interest in fighting tournaments.
You know, I just want to jump in with something. I'm going to answer a question from a while back that I didn't answer. I chose not to answer it because how did the SCA change for you? I chose not to answer that question. I want to jump in Helga, you had made a comment about burnout and uh, how you thought that perhaps the gap was, with people, women winning and then leading to burnout. I nearly quit the SCA after my reign. I got knighted in January, and then I won Coronet in July. And there's been a lot of discussions with the female knights in the past about the pressures that we feel. Is it pressures you put on yourself? Is it perceived? Is it real? Is it externalized? How you internalize it? Is it all bullshit? But it could be all bullshit. We don't know. But I will say, legitimate or not, I legitimately I felt pressure, whether I put it on myself to be good, whether I put it on myself to be a superhero, because I was part of the Middle Kingdom at the time. The Midget had Fern, and then they had me. And then I was the only one. I'm the only woman in the history of the Middle Kingdom who had won a crown or coronet. And the pressure everywhere I went, it was, oh, you're Elizabeth. And, I felt this pressure to be more than I was. If you watch Coach's Corner a lot, you'll hear me say, I'm just Bess. I'm not a superhero. I'm not, God knows I'm no saint. I'm out there getting drunk and falling down, and people would come to me, and I literally had people say to me, oh, Bess, as I was watching a tournament, you have to watch how you watch the tournament. I'd be like, huh? And they said, well, your face expresses what you think of the bouts. And I'm like, good. I thought that guy was a big fat cheater head, and I'm gonna make an ugly face. I'm not gonna keep a straight face when I see somebody rhinoing their way through crowns or coronets. And I was literally told that now that I was Viscountess and now that I was a knight, I had a certain image that I had to uphold. And I'm like, I can't do that. That's not who I am. And I'm not a hero. I'm not this angel, this saint that I kept hearing that I was, oh, you're my hero. I want to be just like you. And I'd be like, oh shit, you don't know the mess that is inside. You don't want to be this. Trust me. So it was really hard for me. I just about quit the SCA over it, and that is possibly one of the stupidest things that, I think that people would expect to hear. Oh, I just been knighted. I just won coronet. That was fabulous. Yeah, and I really, really wanted to quit because of the pressures that I felt at the time. And it's important to remember it was a long time ago, right? It was 97, 96, 97, and it was a hard time. Things were different then. I hope I wouldn't feel that way now, but it's taken me a long time to come back from that. So, having taken that and Helga's burnout, do you ladies feel that you felt a pressure as crown or coronet by right of arms that you feel the men didn't feel as the by right of arms and afterwards, as I felt afterwards? So let's go. Nathan, did you feel that at all?
First of all, I never felt that I was worth the knightly accolade. And I wonder how many of the men feel this. I didn't let it show, but I always wondered if I was real. I didn't get over that until this last very, very hard novitiate year with a very, very good and saintly priest who's my rector. He's also my religious superior. Who used a training that his brotherhood, his religious brotherhood used. He said the whole point of becoming a religious is to know yourself and be honest with God. Well, it's the same thing when we do this in the field. It's to be honest with yourself and see yourself with all your flaws and not beat yourself up on principle. And I suspect there are an awful lot of men out there who don't feel that they're the great four-letter guy that everybody says they are. They're embarrassed and humiliated, and they hate it when they lose, and they think of all the things they did wrong and they said wrong. I felt all of that in spades, and I'm not sure that's a gender thing.
I suspect you're probably right about that. as a woman, I think we're allowed to have feelings. You know, society lets women have feelings and lets women talk about it and lets us discuss things, say on the female shiv list or in our
I know.
get-togethers. Whereas I
I
think
never did.
men, I don't think men are allowed feel that they're allowed to have it. So I think you're probably quite right about that. But Vanessa, what do you think?
I mean, this is a guy. Yeah, I think like a guy. I never showed that stuff publicly, ever.
I have not shown things or feelings for a long time, but I have learned through coaches' corners and other times that by showing my flaws and my weaknesses, um, that other people feel the same way, and that maybe I am helping people feel so not alone. And that's something that I've learned just recently on Coach's Corner, because I was much the same way. You know, my dad raised us, my sisters and I, to be very strong, very independent women. Um, and I don't do feelings type of thing. But I have learned that it's not, we have them. It's just what do we do with them? And I have learned that talking about them and sharing them, uh, we're not alone. And I'd like to think that whether the guys who listen to us and hear us talk about it, they can say, it's not just me. I'd like to think that they think that way. However, Vanessa, what about you? Do you think that the guys felt something by right when they were royalty by right of arms that you did or didn't feel? Do you think they're different than us?
I think they have, like you were stating, I think they have the same emotions, but they don't necessarily show it like we do. My daughter has a great phrase that she uses that I've stolen from her. She goes, I leak. This will be over shortly, and then we'll be fine. And so I've used that. And, and I need to thank Sir Sagan von Ostensee, who took over as my knight when Sir Kilson passed. And
Yeah.
he had a wonderful teaching technique that he used at the end of all of the fighting that we did for the day. And that was, all right, what was the cool thing that you did today? And we go around in a circle. And then he'd follow that with, what did you struggle with today? And everybody answered these questions. And it was an eye opener for, the new fighters that, hey, just because they're a knight or a duke or whatever status they're at, they're still working on stuff. They're still struggling with stuff. And some of it was mental stuff. Some of it was physical stuff. And so I really thank him for that aspect. It's changed how I look at fighting. It's changed my mental lizard brain, or at least helped with it.
That's
Can
good.
I?
That's a good exercise.
So can I? I just wanted to say about this because it was a long time ago. For a long time there was some serious imposter syndrome. That I didn't belong. It wasn't really an acceptable thing. I do feel that there are pressures that, regardless of male, female, we put on ourselves, and that I agree with Mathan that the guys feel it too. But I think females tend to fall a little bit more hard on themselves for the imposter syndrome. And I think that is a thing. And I think that's still a thing, even though we've gotten better about it. And that maybe can be, considered as something that is more female oriented than male.
I think as females also, as has been shown in business, that guys that are mediocre are more likely to bluff their way to the top. And women who are mediocre go, I'm kind of mediocre. And adopting some of that bluster to bluff your way to the top and have people think you're all that. I know plenty of folks who have done that, and then they start believing their own press. And we don't tend to bluster our way. We give you what we actually are. And when we're taught, okay, well, suppress that, don't show that to the outside. When you start breaking folks apart, you start seeing that there's a lot of folks that actually go, maybe I'm not all that. And we tend to disdain those that we know are believing their own press that aren't all that. It's like, okay, you served your purpose, but you don't get to come in here and tell me you know all these things and then you actually don't, and you're actually not giving us useful information, because now I'm at a level that I can pick apart your stuff that's just bullshit and your stuff that actually is real.
It's a lesson in humility.
So, so once again, we're coming towards the end of a Coach's Corner episode. I had more questions. We had more viewer questions. Unfortunately, we're not going to get to them all. I'm sorry, viewers. If we're lucky, maybe we'll have a follow-up episode on this one. We have so many good questions that we just didn't get to. Thank you, ladies, for being on the show. Do you
What's
have
the
any
name
last...
of your cat? Wait. What's the name of your cat?
Sorry, this is Tigger. He's a 6-month-old. He has no tail.
Oh,
That's it. Sorry.
well,
He's a snuggler.
I do cat. Now you were closing us off.
I was. So, but let's start from as we were. Do we have any last words? Nathan, do you have any last words?
I'm going to let everybody else go around, and if I have any, I'll jump in at the end.
Okay. Veressa, what about you?
Go for it. Keep going. Keep pushing on. Keep pressing on. Tell your lizard brain to take a hike and keep moving on.
Gwen Lillian?
What I try to say to female presenting fighters is believe in yourself. You really can do it, and you really are as good as it. You're that good. Believe it.
Mari?
Find the joy in it. There's lots of things to steal that joy away. Sometimes you have to work through the shitty bits to get back to the joyful bits, but it's worth it. And if this is where you find your happiness, have a great time. And if you're done, walk away. You can come back. We're going to be here.
Helga?
Have to remember to unmute myself. Mine's less inspirational than keep going. It's honor people, respect tradition. Or one of the things about traditions in the SCA, women weren't originally allowed to fight for whatever reason. We honor people, so we change tradition. We make our own traditions and go from there. If you want more people on field, if you want more gender minorities, if you want more just people there, we have to look at the traditions that we are holding that hold back those groups. We have to look at our social and cultural, behaviors that are holding back that group. We have to look at how we treat those groups while they're reigning or while they're being successful. If you want more people there, look at what of our traditions need to be honored, but maybe changed and updated through time. There's a huge community up and coming. Look at the laws. Do we need to change laws to non-gendered? Do we need to make sure that sovereign and consort is non-gendered? What barriers do we remove to make sure that more women and more of our minority populations are up here and being able to do what we do and not having to fight the fight that Maven had to fight, not dealing with some of the bullshit that I dealt with on field during this reign and everybody in between here? If we do that, this society will continue to flourish and grow, and we will see so many more women. It won't be some one-off episode where there's 6 of us sitting here where there's only 10 of us that have done it. Keep challenging those things and do the things so we can keep doing this.
Maven?
And now I can say, following Helga, absolutely bang on, sister. The world is changing. I'm finding this in the Episcopal Church. We're looking at having to sell the churches because we can't afford to keep the lights on. We went through 2 years of COVID. Where are we going to find sites anymore that can support 10,000 people? Who's got the energy to go off for 4 days when jobs are hard and housing is almost impossible to find? The world is changing. And we may have to do some stripping down. It may be more local tourneys. It may be not traveling as far, which I love doing. It's gonna be different. But absolutely, Helga, we've got to move with the new reality of expanding gender definitions and identity politics and all the things that the real world is dealing with, it's going to come into us too. This is not anymore 1960 something when half a dozen disaffected people had a march against the 20th century down Telegraph Avenue. That's dead.
I will say that the SCA let us ladies fight, let us women fight. They, we were elevated to the order of the chivalry. Who am I at this point to say, I got mine, screw you? That's not what we do. I'm not going to stop and say I got to be included, but nobody else gets to be included. So I will fight for people who need to be included. And that is my promise to you. That is my promise. I will work to make the SCA a better place. Because we are here because somebody, me and others, fought for me. So it's the least I can do to pass on that thank you and to fight for whomever needs to be fought for. So thank you all for joining us. Thank you, viewers. We didn't get anywhere near through the questions that we wanted to have. I appreciate you very much for joining us. I'm not going to be on again until the new year, so I hope your holiday seasons are good. Stay safe. Don't drink and drive. That's the insurance person in me. But also, don't drink in your drive. Your dogs, your cats, and your horses want you to come home again, so please be safe. Next week, we have an episode up. It's called Can an Old Dog Learn New Tricks? Retooling your fight, moving from your old style to a new style. The hard point is when you have to change to move forward, which is sort of what we're talking about now. So I invite you all to join us next Friday. In the meantime, good night.